Greetings, everybody. Tonight, it's going to be an exciting one. It's been a few weeks since we streamed, but I just had to do this one. It took me a little while to get it together. So I wanted this to be a special review. It's a really impactful, powerful book. Made a huge statement when it came out. We're going to get into that a little bit. And I wanted to give it its due. So we definitely have a stellar panel for the Horseman, Rippaverse comic book. Just came out recently. I think it was their last release. Yeah. So we're pretty on top of things for once here at the show. I'll give myself credit for that. So working hard for all of you, working hard. And we've got Chuck Dixon on tonight for a little interview. So we'll talk a little bit about future projects, what it was like writing the Horsemen, and all things Dixon. Yeah. That's going to be a very fascinating conversation because there's quite a lot of material to get into there. So definitely everybody saddle up, or as Bancroft would say, giddy up. Getting kinky there, Mr. Bancroft. Of course, we've got Twitless. He says pony up. Not sure how I feel about all this horse talk going on in the chat, you guys. Little degeneracy going on. Not sure if I approve. Student of God says, let's go. Indeed. Let's go. Let's get these horses rocking and rolling. G'day, Quantum Age Comics. That's Hex Allen. Gamel's already on top of me. Gamel, how dare you? How dare you run my show from the chat? Mango's here. He says you're all nice people. All right, well, I'll trust you. That's a soothing face. I'll take comfort looking at it. Student of God wants me to just shoot the link out. No. Link goes out to a select few. Very exclusive elite panel, and of course the interviewee we have coming up later. So guys, stay tuned for that. No open call-ins. It's just going to be just us and the boys, having our little circle of conversation. So let's start to square this circle a little bit. Let's get on a few of the squares we got in the back. We've got this square, Twitless.
I think you misread students of message. He said he put the link out.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, I'm all.
He was promoting us. He wasn't.
Yeah, I'm all wired up. I don't know. I've got my horses going.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for the promotion. We're not putting you on blast.
Yeah. Sorry, student of God.
This is why no one watches us.
This is why I bring you on. Is like I'm all revved up and like just leaping across the whole yard, and you're just like, whoa, settle down there.
Oh, settle down there, little horsey.
All right, let's get settled in. Let's bring on another guy. He's quite chill, and he's gonna set us all straight. Let's bring on Daniel P. Riley. Hey, no need to unmute. Just talk directly into the muted microphone.
Sign language, yes. All your thoughts today.
Perfect. All right. Well, there was a sign earlier, and I read the sign. It was telling me to look to the stars, and there's only one bright shining star that I know, and of course, it's Michael Bancroft.
Oh, I thought it was going to be the other one. Oh, that's that. Thank you very much.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, you should accept compliments. Just
I do humbly.
Yeah,
humbly. Thank you.
learn.
I do tweeting out the link currently.
I appreciate that. Well, since you didn't accept my compliment adequately enough, I'm going to give it to somebody else, and let's snatch it back and bring on another really bright star, the brightest star of all, brightest in all of comic reviews. Let's show.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a rich conversation. We've got some impeccable minds here on the panel. It's going to really rivet everybody. I think they're going to dig in deep, tease apart every little detail of this book, every possible nuance. What do you guys think? Any preliminary thoughts? Any things that you're already chomping at the bit to get at here at this book?
I looked at gift horse in the mouth already.
I remember just life in general.
How are we on horse puns? Is that like
I'm up to like
ready for as many as possible.
4 or 5.
Is it going to be that kind of show?
Good. Okay. Saddle up.
Let's quit horsing around and get to the review.
All right.
Is chomping at the bit? Is that a?
Yeah, I was
a
going to say
horse-
that
Yeah,
one.
Yeah, all right.
All right. Hold your horses, guys. Let me bring up the.
Nay.
Let's bring. Let's bring up the campaign first. Pre-order collection. So this was when Horseman first went up on the Rippaverse site, and this is a little bit of a summary of how it did. So up to this point, I don't think a lot of books were crossing this threshold. Like Rippaverse had a few early hits, $1 million, funded books, but then there was a lag for a little while, and then Horseman really like kicked things up, took it to the next level. And 800,000 in sales with 14,000 books. So it's a standout. And I think
As well,
that
I think this was the first book that they funded with this new site design as well, which
Mhm.
in my mind was a really, really big improvement on what they had previously.
Yeah, it's a real show horse.
Hmm. Yeah, so a lot of people ponied up and plunked down their bets. They bet on their favorite horse here, and there was a lot to offer. So
We're really gonna run out of. We're gonna run out of.
Yeah,
like,
I'm-
blow them
I'm-
all
I'm-
and looking for
I'm
some
Google
working
private.
more
them.
if we need more.
I'm working them as hard as I can. I'm gonna have to start Googling, more horse puns. I like this T-shirt. I don't know why I didn't get it. I need to pick one up though. This is nice, I think, with the Horseman skull and the guns. It's very
Yeah,
violent. Sorry, go.
Too many people just will plonk like a rectangle image on a t-shirt. I find it's good when they actually do a proper designed t-shirt. Usually if you've got that sort of oval shape.
Yeah, there's a lot of really like violent imagery associated with this.
It's a lot of
property.
weaponry for a t-shirt.
Yeah, yeah.
You go pick up the kids in kindergarten, get some interesting looks.
I do like those those bloody sticks. Kind of like you just killed someone by shoving it up their butts.
Oh,
Got a
Yeah, that's-
little bit of an Expendables vibe.
yeah. I'm not gonna have to explain that to my son's third grade teacher. Picking him up from school, but.
I mean, to be fair, there's like metal band cover T-shirts that are just as questionably explainable to elementary
They're
school
coming-
teachers.
Come to think, those are huge pistols. Those are enormous. They're like Deagles or something.
Yeah, they're bigger than his head.
Bigger than his head.
Check out the size of these bullets too.
That
Man,
middle bullet. That's a. I
Those
the
are
bullet
for-
has a little curve. And
those are for tanks.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
big bullet there.
A big 50 cal or something to fit them.
I don't know. The imagery really just pops though, right? So you want all the gory details when you look at a scene like that on a man's T-shirt. That's how you know.
Are we going to review the shirt or the comic?
He's a real horseman.
Yeah, I haven't studied the t-shirt previously. I haven't done
Ah.
that.
Damn it!
Well,
kinda
Reg
feels like
is
he's
talking
dying.
out about.
Nobody did the homework. I sent out T-shirt links clearly. All right, let's get to the.
I didn't get one.
Let's get to the comic. Let me bring it up. Now my links aren't working, of course. Yeah, guys, Horseman. So somebody start me off with a summary. Who's good at this stuff? I'm going to volunteer.
How,
Twitless, you go ahead. You know you want to do
Okay.
it. You know you're prepared.
Horseman is a very well designed T-shirt, and
Oversized guns.
it's extra large. And all right, in a world
very
where
best.
oh, you interrupted my movie trailer voice. I have to start all over. Okay,
Okay,
in a
my bad.
world. Darn it. In a world, take three, where excepts roam the streets and the cities are rife with crime, one man with no powers but plenty of training will take the reins away from the crime lords. He is the Horseman. In his civilian life, he is Hector
It's
Lee
Horseman.
Caballero, a veteran who is just trying to get by and provide for his disabled sister and nephew. But at night, he prowls for crime so he can take their ill-gotten gains. But when he gets roped into doing the dirty work for some dirty cops, Horseman gets caught up in a game where he's intended to be the ultimate loser. Find out if Hector can overcome the odds in Horseman #1.
So a hero without powers. Is this no?
No,
He's
it's
more
not
like a
even a
vigilante.
hero. Yeah.
Not
He's
a
not.
hero.
He's not really motivated by nobility. Really, it's kind of like I want to protect my family, which is still a good thing, but he's not really like a justice kind of guy.
We
Mm.
have a guy here. This is when I was reading this. We have a guy here. He actually, Eric Bana made him. Played him in a movie called Mark Chopper Reed, and that was his thing. He was a like a heavy, that underworld people would sometimes hire, and he just realized at some point a lot of these so-called gangsters, they're not that hard to push over, and he would go around stealing their money, and if they fought back, he at least he said he would kill them. And that was his thing. It's a lot like that in that sense. It's a guy who needs money, who has a particular set of skills, and uses them to extract said money.
But he's
So
he's doing it through the guise of a superhero. Like he has the superhero outfit, he has the superhero name.
Yeah.
He even has
Well, not originally. He doesn't remember.
Not yet. That's what confused me at the end. Like he's at the end, he's called Horseman, or Horseman,
Mhm.
and then here he has like already get the getup of a horseman. Like he has like the mask and like the emblem and everything.
Unfortunately, it's not actually like explained, but there's one panel at one point. I don't remember exactly, but it's one of the slice of life moments where there's an image of him and his ranger pals, and they have that symbol of the the rook chess piece.
You mean the knight, right?
The knight. My bad. Sorry. Yeah. Sick brain. They have that symbol. It's on the picture with him and his ranger buddies. So I think the idea behind it was he was using that symbol as a representation and sort of a, I'm doing this in the same way me and my guys would do it back in the service.
Well, yeah, they talk
Okay.
about that where he's like why don't you get a job? It's like, well, I'm using my skills to the best way I know how. It's kind of like the old style, like one of those like Rambo kind of stories, I guess, where I don't know anything else, so but I'm really good at war, so this is kind of what I do.
He's very good at it.
Yeah, he's like exemplary at it. He knows how to track down guys. He knows where to hit him, how to hit him, why some tactics work and some don't.
It's a little like
like here he's like sensing music. Like I hear the vibration of the music, so my guess is right on.
It also a little bit reminds me of Mike from Breaking Bad, who also, he was a cop, just like the Horseman was a military guy, and then he had the daughter-in-law and a granddaughter to kind of look after. Essentially, he has his sister and her son, so his nephew. So it's sort of a little bit like that. And he has these skills that really puts him kind of way above most other people he's going to run into out there. So he uses them to profit and, I guess, live.
Yep. But it's not an altruistic purpose beyond making money to take care of his family.
I think there is like a slight sense of these guys are criminals, so I'm going to take from them. But there is also he knows, because he knows he doesn't tell his sister, for example, because he knows she would say that's dirty money, and he knows
Right.
that's right. So there is a sort of like, yeah.
Well, so what we're circling around here is the fact that although this it's operating ostensibly in the superhero genre, it's there are some gaps and things that don't match up with typical superhero media. Again, like typically the superhero is going to have a mission, and the mission, the superhero is usually a little bit self-aware. Actually, this is something because it's a misconception that people have that superheroes aren't self-aware, but superheroes the genre works because the hero is kind of aware of the role he plays. So Batman, for example, when he goes on his mission, he's like, I need to scare criminals. Bat flies in. Oh, I will be a bat. And so, but he has this idealistic mission that he's bringing to the world, which is to save it from crime by being a symbol, being something larger than just a cop. Otherwise, he could just like literally just, dress up in a black trench coat and just like kill bad guys or something. Even the Punisher, who is an anti-hero, still has the idea of, I want you to see the skull. I want you to see that I am death coming to the death dealer. It's being a symbol of some kind. That's why there's so much drama, and so many times they've rewritten Superman's S. Essentially, what does the S stand for? It has to be more than just you having powers. Otherwise, it's just a sci-fi comic or something. And with Horseman, though, we have literally no idea why he is wearing the outfit. Because if he is, and the comic actually goes out of its way to tell us this, that he actually is just doing it for the money, because he goes, you know what, I could just apply for other jobs. And he actually considers this. He in the comic, we spent a lot of time in his head. He eventually just says, I'm going to look into quit. So it is just a job for him. Why is he wearing a superhero outfit if it's just a job for him? Even Kick-Ass, a deconstruction of superheroes. You have a kid who's like obsessed with superheroes. And so he's like, I'm going to dress up like a superhero and fight crime because he's a little, effed up in the head. This guy is a supposedly wouldn't call him an everyman, but he is a little bit of a Joe Schmo in a way. He's a veteran who's meant to be relatable, and he's just trying to provide for his family and trying to do a little vengeance against criminal element, I guess. But why wear the symbol? Why be a character? Why have a code name Horseman? Like, what? We were not given any of this, and it's one of the biggest weaknesses of the writing. I actually think it is something that is being held. I think Chuck Dixon is actually being held back here a little bit, because I think Chuck Dixon is so used to writing like Batman, where you come to Batman already knowing so much about the character, and so you don't have to establish things. But in a new superhero universe, we only know what you're telling us. We only know what we are shown and told in this very issue. And so if you don't tell us why this guy is a superhero, you give us no real inkling to it, other than, oh, hey, my old unit used to have like a horse on a playing card. Why? These things are at cross purposes with each other. Him just being a regular schlub making money, and him being a superhero. It just doesn't quite work out, and it really plays havoc with the motivations for the character.
I have a slightly controversial theory on why that is.
Delve into the controversy, please.
Well, I believe that Eric July's narrative theme for the Rippaverse is not to make superheroes.
So they're going to be every man, essentially.
Yes, there's
donning the Sarb.
For example, I mentioned this last time with the what was it, Alpha Core, where like there seems to be a disdain for having code names, and all the fun superhero stuff seems to be kind of cut out for some reason.
Yeah, the world that he's built is more of a gray morality system with powers, basically. It's not traditionally, like, if you imagine what we all know of comic books, even those that sort of shifted gears in the 80s and 90s, which seems to be his area that he likes to play in with the construction of his comics, they're all morally gray individuals who happen to save people, but they do so for their own purposes.
They're a little morally gray. I think I see where I kind of agree. I think with where you're taking that. It's definitely different than what Marvel and DC set up, which is just the aspirational aspect of it. The thing that's odd is the fact that Horseman has the codename Horseman, and he has a horse flavored costume. If this is just people with powers, it would just be like a guy in a trench coat. And like, there are comics and there are fantasy stories in the genre that kind of do that. We're just gonna have it like Heroes, the television show, just people with powers. But this clearly wants to have the superhero aesthetic. I think he's trying to do something a little more like Valiant with Jim Shooter. Jim Shooter was trying to take things a little more away from the I'm Spider-Man, and just have characters with abilities and code names, but kind of dial it down, make it more like the world outside your window. So I think
Right.
they're trying to go a little more in that direction. And to be fair, to your point, the characters in Valiant tended to be a little more. They weren't as black and white. I don't know if I would call them full gray. Like it's not like Ennis or Ellis or the British Invasion guys who really muddy the waters, but they definitely were a little less black and white than Marvel and DC. It was another kind of flavor going on there.
Aside from the dramatics of being adventurous tales of people with strange abilities, it's just people. I think he was leaning more towards a standard reality with this flavor aspect in telling these stories.
Does anyone want to address Niobe Comics' comment here? That is a
Not
good thing.
really.
It shouldn't be. Okay. Well, I'll read it just for the panel's sake. That is a good thing. It shouldn't be the same old, same old. Much like the TV show Heroes, none of them were really a hero.
I'm probably a bit biased because that's exactly how I'm writing my story. Where, if you were to find yourself having powers, probably the last thing you would do is make yourself a funky costume and give yourself a nickname. But that's grounding it in the world that we know. That's the grounding in the world that we know. If you're looking to do it grounded in the world of superheroes, that's a completely different thing. I don't know if this was mentioned, I can't remember, but I assumed as I was reading this that he got his suit from his military days, and it's some sort of, he has worked on it and beefed it up and perfected it.
There's
and obviously
two
given himself
suits.
a little.
Yeah, there's in the beginning there's a different suit that he has where it's like it looks more military-esque, where he's fighting the Batman with the bat.
It looks a
Yeah.
lot like Guardian from the DC stuff,
Look, it
just
looks more like he-
military tactical gear over top.
Or,
Yeah.
or
Like
sports.
he put together. Like he put together.
Yeah, Spartan, Guardian, same dude.
But he still has that rook symbol. He still
Mhm.
has it on there. So
I think it was the company logo.
I guess after this, because he has a different helmet. I guess it's at some point after this, he's like, I need a new helmet with I want little horse ears on it and some hair, because that's kind of where he gets a new helmet.
I think the costume is fine, by the way. Like I said, I'm fine with the in a superhero comic, having a superhero be Horseman. Like, superheroes is a wide genre. There have been way crazier looking characters. Like I said, he's not even, this doesn't even rate, because I know some people are like, oh my gosh, Horseman, and it's like, oh my gosh, Paste Pot Pete, Condiment King. I can list, like, off the top of my head, we can all rattle off the top of our heads like a half dozen goofier or sillier superheroes and supervillains. So it's not the Horseman idea that I think is the problem. It's the fact that I don't know why he is the Horseman. And in a story where we're spending so much time in this character's headspace, which is Chuck Dixon's lane, that he if you're used to his like Nightwing and Huntress and his Batman stuff, his street level vigilante characters, he's in his lane here. We're in this kind of street level vigilante's head. So you're going to be very much at home with that if that's kind of what you're used to.
I agree.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like his original costume, which looks more military-esque, he looked more like an anti-hero stuff. And then when he goes to Texas, I think that's when he gets the horse. Like his costume shifts to more of a horseman style. And that
was the other weird part about it.
That would make more sense if like that's at the end of the thing, right? It's like I think he should have kept the military-looking outfit until the end, where Solara is like, "What are you going to call yourself?" "Oh, the last of the Horsemen," and then he adopts the name Horseman. And that's kind of where he would get like the themed costume appearance. I think you should have just kept
timeline wise, it doesn't make sense.
Well, okay, so that's if Chuck was writing this with a typical superhero arc, and he's not. He's actually writing the opposite of all of the superhero story beats. I think that's on purpose. Every single step that Hector takes is the literal opposite of what a superhero character is supposed to take. I can even run this down for you. So a superhero is supposed to have he's supposed to keep the secret from his family, right? Spider-Man takes years to finally get to a point where he can start sharing this with other people. Horseman doesn't even make it through like halfway through this comic before it's, I quote, "I told Patty everything." So like he breaks that. Every single rule of superhero genre fiction is something that he breaks. You're supposed to be in it, not in it for the money. He's in it for the money. You're not supposed to tell your family. He tells his family halfway through. You're not supposed to basically get like looped into doing dirty work for the cops. Like you're supposed to be above that. He's looped into dirty work for the cops. You're supposed to overcome your supervillain. He doesn't overcome the supervillain. He just gets saved by another superhero at the end. And you're supposed to not, and you're not supposed to quit. The superhero never quits on his mission. The mission is the superhero character. And by the end of this, he's like, oh, I'm going to hang this up. So every single crossroads, and Chuck knows this. Chuck knows superheroes. I know this has to be deliberate. This is an anti-superhero book in some ways, and that's fascinating from a literary perspective.
Yeah, what is the intended narrative then? If he's taking that construct with this character, what is the intended archetype? Is there a theme that he's trying to deliver on? What are the enemies that he confronts? Talk a little bit about the conflict. Maybe that'll reveal a little bit of the reason why he decided to take this story path.
Internal or
really
external?
interesting. I found it really interesting in terms of like the arc. It is like your typical like a thriller kind of arc where a guy begins at one point and then he goes on where he gets caught by the cops, and you have the rising tension. You have the climax of the movie. Essentially, he goes like he's by himself. He has to move to Texas to get away from the other place because they know him too much. They know him too well. And then he goes in. Boom! We get hit with rising stakes because he's made by these dirty cops. And I thought it was pretty cool to have the dirty cops be like they're in it for themselves, playing everyone against each other. So they're using Horseman to attack this big boss to weaken him, so they can get a cut of his money. That was pretty cool. And then another twist comes in. He hires these Nazis, and these Nazis that are like they go and they kill everybody. They just kill everybody, and they have no compunctions of who it is. They even end up killing those dirty cops who were playing him. So it does have good rising action, good action altogether. We have he's been giving these jobs, but these tips, and then here comes the trap. The warehouse scene where they like, okay, time to cash in. And it's a pretty cool story thriller wise. It goes up, rising action climax, and then you have a de-escalation. The only disappointment I really had was like, oh, it's all the problems that he was fighting the entire story are solved by other people. I was like,
the other thing that's bizarre about it too, which I found to be really weird when you think about it, is that I do agree, Lit, that as a thriller with like rising action, following the plot beats of an action story, Chuck knows how to do that. He knows how to deliver on a good action piece. But this was a story where I got to the end and I realized that the protagonist had never met the antagonist face to face, and he only meets the final boss, the final muscle. They just crash, and he just goes, "Oh, I expected someone to show up." And then that's his introduction to those bad guys. There's no build up or tension where like he meets them and he initially fights them. Maybe they defeat him and he has to come back and overcome them later. None of that is there, which is another superhero rule trope, right? Spider-Man, Batman, every superhero you can just about name will typically face off. They perfected this down to a formula where like Spider-Man faces off against Electro, gets zapped, comes back, has to overcome. Hey, I've got insulated gloves now. I now beat you. And this story was just, oh, hey, I guess it's time to have the final fight. He's not met any of these people, doesn't even know their names. And then suddenly he's just figuring out on the fly, oh, I guess this guy has powers. Oh, that's what his powers are. I guess I'll just have to have someone else save my hide. It's so weird how in some ways I completely agree that the story does hit the a expectation of action storytelling. But by breaking every single rule in the superhero genre toolkit, I don't know if a single rule is not broken by the end of this story.
It also feels like the reason I asked internal or external when it came to who the antagonists of the story were is that the overall part of the narrative is that Hector is his own worst enemy. Everything that happens is his own fault. From the start, he got too big, got too well known in the original place, and had to retreat. So he had to spend, I assume, practically all of the money that he had stolen from all of those criminals that he pissed off back in the original city on moving his family and him all the way out to Florspark, Texas, and also spent it on a completely new suit for some reason that's never clearly defined. And then he immediately goes back to doing the same thing in this totally new place and makes a bunch of ridiculously rookie mistakes that drive him into the exact same circumstance. Like
Rookie
he didn't,
mistakes.
yeah, like
Okay.
he didn't take
I got
any
that.
of that knowledge with him, and just
He says that.
and
He
even
says that.
acknowledges
He
it at one
acknowledges that.
point.
He's like, "Oh yeah,
I'm-
yeah."
I was a freaking idiot.
But
So
here's the thing. So I can understand, like, okay, maybe I should change the costume, move to another place, and get a new look so I'm not recognized. But that kind of flies out the window when it's still the same emblem on his chest.
Right.
It will Batman get, I guess Batman could, like, move to
Where
another
did he
state.
where did he move from and to?
I forgot
He
what it was
moved to
called.
Texas.
Yeah,
The
he moved. He
treasure-
moved to.
yeah.
He moved to Florida Spark. I don't. Did they specify?
Right in the
what
beginning, I think they specify. Let me check.
Drescher. I
Yes,
think
Yeah.
Drescher. And then they go to
Maybe he
Texas.
felt like that was far enough. I don't know. I don't really read superhero stories much anymore. So I haven't read any Rippaverse stuff until this. So I don't know, straight away I was sort of feeling this was kind of more like a 80s action movie, like Tango and Cash type story that I was reading. And so
But with
the
a super
fact
cool
that it's
costume.
yeah, and with a little bit of that kind of mixed into it as well.
It's a little Death Wish
Um,
too, I think.
What I'm hearing, though, is- Sorry.
whatever your kind of favorite sort of thing is.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I was like a bit like more like what Lit Dev is saying. That's why I'm sort of like reading it like this is a movie, and you got that over the top crazy villain who is yelling at everyone all the time and everything.
I could have saw the battle with the Nazis, kind of like the battle with the Russian and the Punisher. But the Punisher never met the Russian beforehand. It was just like one, like, who the hell are you? And then it was a pretty cool battle, and he killed him with pizza. It was pretty awesome.
I don't remember that one.
I think that one is because that one's part of a larger conflict that he's having with the mob, though, and so I
With
don't.
the
I think
Nucci's, yeah.
yeah, and so like it feels satisfying at the end with that total payoff when he finally cleans them all out. This one, it's really bizarre when I try to think about how the story is put together and paced in some aspects, like specifically regarding the protagonist and antagonist, because it's just like to Horseman, he has literally no connection or barely any dialogue he shares with any of these people. They're just basically faceless mooks to him, and he's just a faceless menace to them. There's no like
It's not personal.
yeah, there's nothing to that, and that does leave the story in an interesting, if not problematic spot, because typically the best stories have something personal about them. There's something that's like, you've done this to me. He's out for vengeance, right? But this whole mob has nothing to do with the people that killed his brother-in-law. Like, so like, I mean, like there's nothing personal about the story. It's so weird.
At the beginning, I thought he said something like, "I never found them." The people who did this.
Mhm.
So I thought it was setting up the arc of like, okay, maybe the Nazis did or something, but no, it's they didn't. They're just kind of like bad guys. But it was still cool. It's just
Here's my interpretation of what this story is and what it's doing. It's all about what it's setting up, because I'm assuming that this is, despite the ending, this is not the last we've seen of the Horsemen. So if you remember from the origin of Spider-Man, he originally did as well, go out and get his with the money and do the wrestling and everything, and he quickly learned that that's not the right path, and then he would eventually afterwards go on and learn what is to be a hero. That doesn't happen in this story, but what you do get is he realizes, one, that he is completely outclassed in this world because there's all these people with superpowers and he can't match it. And then two, this whole idea of going out and being a vigilante for cash is not a good idea. And, so we're going to get, he had to send his family off to, be safe. And then he nearly died. And that's why I think, I don't know if he quit necessarily, but he never really was a superhero. So he didn't quit being a superhero because he never was a superhero. He quit that idea of, doing this for money and sort of selfishly. And so then what I'm assuming is going to happen, and I could be completely off here, is there will be some future interaction between him and these superpowered people in this world, and he's going to be set on the right path afterwards. And this is sort of like the lesson that he learned to be able to get there. That's sort of my interpretation of it.
Yeah, listening to you guys talk about it, I'm hearing he's a work in progress, and this feels a little bit by the description like a year one story for an anti-hero.
It's
Is that-
definitely that weird prequel story. Did you go, oh, that's
Yeah.
how this guy started? It's,
Yeah. It's the before. Mm-hmm.
But couldn't he
Yeah.
have at least won? All the people that he
Yeah,
fought, it
right.
was solved for him for no reason. I was like, oh, come on, couldn't you have at least like won? And then they come in the last second, like, but they came in and they kill stole. Right? He should have gotten all these points at the end of the game, but they kill stole all of his kills, and then the main bad guy is dead. He's just, oh yeah, by the way, forgot about this guy. He's just drowned somewhere.
Yeah, that was an epilogue. Oh, by the way, the final villain died, and Horseman had no connection to it, didn't know it, never even.
By the
was
way, he's
alive.
just dead.
He's just dead. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh,
That was disappointing. I don't know why that was. It doesn't make any sense to me. It should have been like he kills at least the Nazis, and then the rest could be handled from there. But at least he could have killed the Nazis in some clever way instead of Alpha Corps coming in to kill Steel.
He did some serious damage to the dude Sturm
Yeah.
before.
that
but
was
it
that was
the-
his best moment. His best moment.
Yeah, it was the girlfriend Blitz that cleaned his clock because she's apparently
Okay.
semi-invulnerable and super strong.
I have another bone to pick. I really got to get this one out real fast. So one thing that I read a couple Rippaverse books, and the thing that really gets me is you've got to communicate more about what these people's abilities are and what they can do, including Horsemen. I do not know what the extent of Horseman's gadgets or armor are. I don't know if he can take how much gunfire he can technically take. I don't know if there's like, give me more. You have to tell me that or show me, do a little bit of both. But when a character has glowing energy or something, you got to do. Dixon did a pretty good job. Like I knew that he knew where to plug in this guy has some sort of magnetic powers, and
Yeah.
And Blitz had some level of super strength or something. But again, it's really something in the Rippaverse that I really think needs to be improved. Is one of the most important things that appeals to the people who like superheroes is we want to know what these powers are and what they can do. Give us more, and don't just put it on the trading cards. You know what I mean? And don't have Dokuman just say, well, I don't really know what his powers are. No, just you tell me like, what is this ability? Because that gives me something to relate to and look forward to. And I go, oh, I can't wait to see how this power interacts with someone else's power. Half of the fun. All the forums for decades for superheroes have been people theory crafting. Can Magneto lift Mjolnir? Like that's just like people just like theory crafting and wargaming that very question. So like you gotta like play to the strength here. Let people know more about these abilities so that people can really tease out and go, oh, how could Horseman defeat this character? And then we start thinking along and planning out in our own minds. When Batman faces off against superpowered people, like that's half the fun.
Well, I want to point out that if this is a year one thing, it could have been satisfying. I remember Batman Year One is like you have Batman. First of all, the first occurrence this happens is Batman, where he's trapped in that building. It's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. He's shot, I think, at least twice. I think he shot twice. The cops are coming in. They're barreling down on him. He's like trapped in this basement, and then he has to figure his way out of there. He does. He manages to escape with his like bat summoner skills. And then lastly, which is even better actually, is the Gordon. What's his name? Commissioner Gordon. Jim Gordon's ending, where like he goes back to his home or something like that, and then he finds out that his family's been kidnapped, and then he's like, I think his baby's been kidnapped at the very least, and he has to go after it, and there's this crazy nonsense going on. He has to fight back. It's like if I let them take my family, they're dead. And he has this crazy chase, and then it ends up on the edge of a bridge, and he's falling to the bridge. This guy has his baby and everything. It's crazy, but he's able to come out at the other end on his own as victorious. So I'm not really sure if the idea that year one is that he's just everyone has to solve his problems for him at the end is really a acceptable ending or a necessary one.
So What I was thinking was going back to what somebody said earlier. It's a shared universe. It's a year one where he's surrounded by all these like superhuman figures.
Batman's a
right?
shared universe.
Not Batman's year one story though, right? Like Superman didn't show up
Not
in that.
necessarily, but I mean, if it's a
But
shared
so
universe, you could at
what I was
least have
thinking,
him win still.
yeah. Well, I mean, sure, but I'm thinking that maybe Chuck. Okay, so this I wanted to emphasize Daly's comment here. He wants to establish Hector, I guess, as a human character. But so he says here, if you watch a lot of Chuck's YouTube, you learn that one of his favorite characters is the slob hero, and every man who isn't necessarily classically heroic, but is forced into a situation to be a hero. So this is not your typical year one. It's a year one within a superhero.
Well, I don't
universe.
even think that's really what's happening here. I wouldn't call this guy a slob hero. I wouldn't even call him an everyman forced into a situation. He is exceptional.
Yeah,
he is exceptional.
He's Ranger. He's Ranger.
He
training.
doesn't.
It's
Sure,
a
he
Ranger,
doesn't. He doesn't win. He doesn't win against the powered people, but he kicks butt against virtually everyone else. He takes on dozens of just normal thugs and criminals, and completely destroys them time and time again in the lead up to that. So I think, from what I'm gleaming from this is he is exceptional against in a normal world, but in this world where you got super powered people, he realizes really quickly that he is completely outmatched, and there's no reason in the current state that he's in, like where he's at, for him to continue if these people are in the game, because he's just there's no way he can win. It's like one of us going against a superhero. It's just
I mean, I think at the very least he could have won, but lost something precious, like maybe one of his loved ones got hurt even more, or he lost a hand or something. And then, but he came out winning, but he can't. He's like, I can't do this again. I can't afford to fight these superpowered people. No, there's a movie called, I think, The Hit List, with Cuba Gooding, and that one stars actually one of these kind of guys that Chuck Dixon likes. It's a everyman. He hates what the story's about. Is this guy? His life sucks. Like his wife or his girlfriend or wife is cheating on him with his best friend. His boss is an asshole. His rival in the company got his promotion. So he meets this guy in the bar, and the guy in the bar he meets is a hitman played by Cuba Gooding, and he's like, let's have they play a little game there where how about you write down a list of everyone that you want dead, and that what happens is that he actually goes off and starts killing all these people, and the guy has to stop him because he put his girlfriend on the list. But this guy wins against this legendary hitman played by Cuba Gooding, but he does so using his bravery and his valiance. So he's able to overcome this everyman who has like no real skills, is able to overcome this hitman. I know it's not like a super powered hitman, but I mean is even if he's an ordinary Joe, a slob hero, a guy if he had no exceptional abilities, I still think he should have at least won in the end, even if it was a Pyrrhic victory.
All right, so it behooves us to talk a little bit about the art before we bring on Chuck, since we're kind of running short on time. Guys, what was your take on Joe Bennett's work here for Horseman?
Well, I'm not really an artist, but it was fine with me. I mean, it didn't distract me or anything. I didn't go like, oh, that's awful. So it worked for me, so I can say.
I
Michael,
think it was.
You're the resident artist on the panel.
Me?
Yes.
It
all falls on you.
Look, the style is not really for me. It's how do I call it? Like contemporary, modern.
It's very 2000s to me. Like
whatever it is. I don't really know. How to describe it. It's not really something that would draw me to a book. I think I much more enjoyed the story than I did the art. The colors were too often very what do you call it? Local colors. Like there wasn't much atmosphere a lot of the time in terms of kind of more interesting lighting effects and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I noticed
for me.
I noticed that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, everything looks like it's lit. Not everything. A lot of the time, it looks like it's lit under normal white fluorescent lights. A lot of times, it actually is, and it's set in daylight. So,
I noticed a little bit of like color theming here and there, like in the Alpha Core Airy, I think is their air fortress. There was they had like a green. So there's some color theory going on, but I do agree. I think there could be better mood lighting. I was actually going to bring up this very page for an art gripe. So I don't know if it's because these books are being put into how they're being the binding for them, but there were some really unfortunate double page spreads. And this was one of them. Can you actually bring up the one where he is flying? He's flying Horseman. It's actually later towards the conclusion, past the area.
Oh yeah, I actually ran into this problem. It sucks. Like it happens with perfect binding.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will be an issue if it was saddle stitched. Ironically, no.
It wouldn't be. No, it wouldn't be. When you perfect bind, you have to nudge the art, especially anything that crosses over that's important, especially if it crosses over horizontally. I think there's actually lines up. Okay, is that his shoulder? It's supposed to. Anyway, I'd have to look into a bit more. But yeah, I've had that issue. I haven't had that issue in my books because I nudge the art. So you got to know there's like almost, depending on the thickness of the book, almost you could lose an inch, at least half an inch for sure, into the spine.
Well, one
so
of the
you
answers
do have to push things out from the side. So what the actual print file, you looks like the guy's got to like say, if his arm is reaching over, that's what I found in my book. It looks like he's got a really long arm, but once it's printed and bound, it looks the illusion is it looks perfectly correct.
Mike S. Miller brought this up, and he said that he said that one of the best practices was because of the spine in the middle. Because of those margins, you typically want to make sure that you don't put really important things that's going to make the art look weird depending on how it's printed.
Yeah.
So he said, for example, don't put faces in the middle, and we got that here.
Absolutely not. Yeah,
there's
never put a face through the spine.
There's a huge issue that I want to talk about here that is really fascinating, and it actually touches on the art direction as a whole. So there's a weakness here, but it's not Chuck's fault. I think Chuck's script calls for this character to be going, whoa, at this large air fortress that Alpha Corps has. They have kind of like this flying helicarrier style fortress. And logic would dictate that the shot composition here would actually have the characters either in the background, but the focus would be on the fortress and actually showing these characters in miniature so the fortress can look bigger. Like that's just kind of like basic shot composition for that. And it's probably what Chuck was expecting. But when the art comes back, it's just a huge double page spread that actually obscures what the story is trying to get us to focus on. So he says, whoa, Solari says, enjoy the view. There is no view. We're just looking at the characters. So it's very clear the script was calling for something else, but it's not Chuck's fault for that. I wouldn't even call it necessarily the artist's fault for that, but the art direction, the overall vision person for the book. So that would be either the Soska sisters or Eric July himself should have been the one to call and say, hey, actually this scene is calling for us to be looking at the fortress and the characters should be in miniature. Don't just do another image style spread where we're just looking at full double page spread characters. So there's a huge miss going on here, but I think it actually unveils a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes at Rippaverse that needs to be improved, which is that direction for shot composition and the visual storytelling it misses here because of that lack of, I think, oversight.
Well,
so in other words, when it comes to the Horsemen, always go with the saddle stitch instead.
There you go. That's the real lesson.
The panel clearly has questions, guys. So let's dive into final thoughts and get into our interview. Twitless, you go since you're on a roll.
Okay. Horseman presents an interesting puzzle to the reader. On the one hand, it contains all the typical formulas for a superhero action rom. Wounded soldier seeking revenge, colorful costume, ruthless gangsters. On the other hand, Horseman is an interesting deconstruction of the genre. It takes the Batman concept, flips it on the tropes upside down. Every time a superhero would break right, Horseman turns left. Superheroes are in it for the greater good. Horseman is trying to make a buck. Superheroes hiding their identities from their families. Horseman just told Patty everything. Superheroes defeat the villain and continue the fight. Horseman gets clowned on by real superheroes or superpowers and then basically quits. In this vein, Dixon has crafted a superhero story deliberately created to violate all the rules of the genre. Here's where it gets interesting for me. Unlike Alan Moore's Watchmen, Garth Ennis's The Boys, or a host of the British Invasion, Dixon is breaking all the formal rules, but keeping the heart of the story intact. We do not see Horseman becoming a drug dealer, abusing his family, sexually molesting anyone. At his core, he's still basically like every other superhero in the sense of trying to kind of do good by his world and the people who are important to him. And that's something that is just there, and it's unescapable or inescapable for the superhero genre. And so Dixon keeps that heart while breaking everything else, almost deliberately so. As an experiment, it's actually kind of interesting for this comic to be doing that, and it actually makes this comic more noteworthy, not less, in terms of the overall Rippaverse, just because of it. It's this really weird experiment taking. Otherwise, I think people will still enjoy the mainstays of Chuck Dixon writing, the sort of internal monologue as he just kind of like goes through beat for beat in these action scenes. So if you're here for that, you're going to get plenty of that. As it connects to the overall Rippaverse, we'll just have to see. He's clearly painting a bigger tapestry with all these interconnected characters, so it's hard to say. But this was one of the more interesting from an interpretive aspect of the Rippaverse offerings, in my opinion.
Daniel P., final thoughts.
As an action story, I thought it was good. Like Lit Dev mentioned many times, it reads like an action film, complete with resolution and all of the highs and lows of tension. I would have liked a little bit more context and detail, and maybe that was not a writing decision, but more of a logistics decision behind it all. Art-wise, I wasn't too bothered by it for the most part, except for the rampant body dysmorphia that tends to happen as far as the Rippaverse books go. They all sort of have weird angles, and sometimes they look like fat people, and sometimes they look like really muscular dudes. It's very odd. But beyond that, yeah, it was a fun read.
Lit Dev, final thoughts.
I quite enjoyed it as an action comic. It had everything I wanted in there. It had the guy trying to fight for his family. It had rising stakes. It had dirty cops, the dirty cops impressed me. They were kind of my favorite characters because wow, I was like, we got to see them at the restaurant, and they're telling the big boss Tuna that they have no idea who this guy is, even though they just told us. Like, what do you mean? Didn't they know who this guy is? And then like, oh, they're playing both sides. That's pretty clever. I like that. Overall, I think the book is actually held back by the fact that it is a superhero book. And there's superpower people in it. If it was like a Punisher style story, like pure Punisher style, Garth Ennis like style story, where he kind of kept the other heroes outside of it, it's just kind of like Punisher in his own little like snow globe universe. I think that would have benefited this movie or this comic. I mean, same thing with like Frank Miller's Year One. It's just Batman. Like a lot of these things, when it's just Batman, it kind of just flourishes. I think it was a little bit. It'd be a little bit better if it didn't have the superhero element in there, because now we have to have all the superhero powered stuff in there, and it's not just a street level guy going around doing things. And second of all, because once the Alpha Core shows up, we know we have a safety net now. It kind of lowers the stakes. If we didn't have the Alpha Core, there was no safety net. And if the family that was built up in the beginning, it was in peril somehow, because that's kind of what it was. It was kind of here. I love this family. They suffered so much. So the last thing that we want to see is this family suffer even more. And they kind of almost got there, but it never actually happened. So if like the Nazis had captured them, and these, like the Garth Ennis had like the Barracuda capture Punisher's baby, and was going like, I'm gonna make you watch as I cut this baby to 1,000 pieces with this knife. That would be crazy. That would have like really raised the stakes and everything. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But the stakes were raised appropriately, but not as much as they could have been. One, because the family that was set up to be the ones to be in peril never fell into peril, and two, because the Alpha Core was there to provide a nice safety net. But overall, I did find it quite enjoyable. I would probably read it. I could read it again voluntarily, which is
high praise indeed. There we go.
Michael Bancroft, quick final thought. We have Chuck Dixon waiting in the back.
Yep. Well, I'm just going to agree with most of what Lit Dev said. Then I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a lot. And again, I'm looking at it from like, someone who grew up watching these 80s action movies where someone takes an exceptional skill and goes and beats up a lot of criminals and stuff like that. But I have to agree, only now that I've heard it, I think it probably would have worked better if he was just doing his street level thing and then he failed, and then in the next story now that he knows Alpha Core and everything, they say, hey, if you want to be a superhero, you got to do it right. You got to, get some more gadgets or something to give you an edge. We'll give you a suit. It'll give you special armor and all that sort of stuff. And I think, because I definitely think that's what this is doing. It's setting up his next arc where he actually might become a hero, but I might be completely wrong. He might just go off and become a vigilante again. I don't know.
All right, everybody. Let's meet Chuck. So everybody, with that, thank you very much, panel, for all your thoughts, and welcome to the show, Mr. Chuck Dixon.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
Howdy, sir.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Good. Not to creep everybody out, but I heard all your final thoughts.
No worries.
You're free to razz the panel for any questions.
Tell us we're all idiots.
I'm just going to cry myself to sleep tonight.
No, I think the resounding consensus was people enjoyed the book. Quite liked a lot of the original ideas you had in there. There was actually a pretty vivid discussion leading up to those final thoughts. People thought that you were taking a very new approach to writing this. It's an anti-hero essentially story in the body of a hero narrative, something along those lines. So would you like to elaborate a little on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically my approach to this was I've written a lot of these kind of characters and I don't ever want to repeat myself. So I wanted to take an entirely different approach with the Horseman. But I'm doing this within what I call a blue sky universe. So there's only so far and so dark I wanted to take this. I think it's pretty dark on its own. There's a lot of dark implications, but I actively wanted to turn this genre on its head, and it will continue to spin on its head with the next volume. So in some of your final thoughts, you were discussing stating some of the aspects of it that you liked, and some changes you look forward to seeing happening, and they will happen, but not in the way you expect them to.
Oh, BTFO.
There we go.
I think you set the tone really well for in that first volume of don't expect the expected. By the time we got through that volume, I was like, okay, we're in a different ball game with this character.
What kind of character?
If you want a really dark, grim, masked vigilante story, Black Warrant is on the way from Arkhaven. That goes a lot darker. But this is the Rippaverse, and it's a nice place to visit.
You bring your family there.
Yeah. I mean, it's
take the kids.
It's not
implied
that
impaling.
They don't want to go grisly, Brit Writer dark.
Can I follow up with that? You said you're doing something different. It seemed like you were consciously violating all of the usual superhero tropes for this type of character. Can you talk a little more, speak more to what you were doing with that? And was that how did that feel, having written Nightwing and Batman for, hundreds of issues?
Well, I mean, I'd written The Punisher, and, his moral compass spins all over the place. But, I didn't want to do a, grim, psychotically driven guy. Because The Punisher has real issues. Hector has issues too, but he's actively trying to deal with them. But he realizes that I'm really only good at one thing, and he feels driven to support, his sister-in-law and nephew, and so he'll take the money, because he convinces himself, I'll spend it wisely, I'll spend it well. To continue my war on crime and keep myself supplied and also pay the rent. So, these are things that a blue collar working class kind of guy would do if he became a superhero. He's not Batman. He's got to fund himself.
Is that the approach you normally take with your characters? You want them to defy expectations, and you don't want to ever have the reader predicting where exactly you're going to be taking things.
Yeah, it's kind of my job. You got to kind of warp and waft and bend everything, because otherwise it's the same old, same old. I mean, I'd be bored writing it, quite frankly. And it's genre fiction. You're in the genre, but you can twist the genre. You can give them what they want, but exceed that. Give them what they expect, but exceed their expectations. You know,
Is
I'm
there-
not
is
about
there-
out to scold anybody like you're stupid for reading this or anything else. You know, I love that stuff. So, but I do want to make you go, you know, hey, maybe you were expecting this, but you might like this better.
Did you
So-
feel that you took a risk or any particular risks with this particular approach that either paid off or that you were concerned about how they would pay off?
No, because I'm giving you everything you want in this genre. I mean, if you like this genre, you're getting all the punching and kicking. He's not sitting around by himself crying, or long windy scenes in restaurants. You know,
He's a
talking about his
man.
feelings, because nobody who wants the genre wants that. And
Mhm.
so I'm giving you everything you want, but maybe a little bit more meat, maybe a little bit more twists and turns you weren't looking forward to, and maybe you're thinking, well, what the hell's going to happen now? Which is also part of the job. I got to make you wonder that.
I did really like the opening. The opening really caught me because it's like the Batman. He's fighting Batman with a bat. I was in because one thing I really
Yeah.
that was and I really love this about the superhero genre. And I think it's important about the superhero genre that people kind of overlook, and that's the superhero genre is kind of goofy. You know, even at its most serious, it's still kind of goofy. And
Yeah.
I think not only is that something that is fun, but it's also important. It's kind of what helps make the genre, even if it's the most serious. Like we have all of these like really deep psychological stories about Joker and Batman, but it's still a clown and a bat. And
Right.
that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. I like
Right.
that. That's one of the parts I really like about the superhero genre. So I will
Amen.
say that I really enjoyed the opening of the Horseman because it's like, oh, here the opening page is a bunch of guys in bat suits, and then he's fighting with a bat. I was in. I was hooked. That got me so good. It was refreshing. I loved it. I was like, I'm in.
That
I'm sold.
reminds me, I have to say that that moment where the baseball bat gets ripped away by the chain, and he thinks, I think he thinks that was autographed.
Yeah.
That was really good.
I like that too because it kind of hints that no one uses an autographed baseball bat to fight if they have other options. You know?
Right.
That was to kind of tell you something about this guy. You know, he didn't go to the sporting goods store and buy a new bat because he just doesn't have those kind of funds, or he's frugal.
And so, I mean,
So bad.
the most important thing about a comic is the opening pages, and this one hooked me. This one, I was ready to go. It was goofy costumes, kind of like bat ninja people versus this guy with an actual baseball bat, and like chains, guns, fighting, immediate action. I loved it. I loved the beginning of this book. It was really fun.
Yeah, I wanted a Lethal Weapon 2 opening. It's like, what the hell's going on? It's like,
It's
I
really
feel like I
good.
came into this late.
That's good that you say
Definitely.
that because I was thinking that era of film when I was
Yeah.
reading this. I
love
mentioned
these
earlier Tango and Cash. I mean, there's a whole slew from A grade all the way down to really kind of trashy Jean-Claude Van Damme sort of movies that I used to love back in that time, and that's the sort of feeling I got while reading this. And I did mention in my closing thoughts that I think he's learnt some important things. It's like what kind of world he actually finds himself in is a big one, because he was kicking butt
Right.
while he was dealing with the criminals. But once they start bringing in the heavy artillery, he realized he was sort of out of his league quickly. Am I right in thinking future installments are going to be a bit more involved with those hero types, or is he going to go back to the street? I don't know. I know you probably don't want to say anything, but
Yeah, it's yes, but not in the way you expect. It's
okay, good. All right.
There's a lot of changes ahead for him. He's going to really he's not the brightest guy in the world. He doesn't, I'm
I
not saying
figured
he's
that part.
stupid, but he doesn't think about consequences. And he doesn't think, well, if I do this, this will happen. He really doesn't think past the moment, and that's going to come back to bite him in the butt in a big way. And he's not a real good judge of character. That's all I'll say about the next installment.
Wow. I'd like to ask a question about your point of view style that I've seen. So in the writing pieces that I've seen from you, you often dive into the beat for beat, moment to moment headspace of these characters. It feels a little noir-ish, but I would love to invite you to speak a little more about what it's some of the opportunities that affords and some of the limitations that you have found that maybe you have to overcome when we only spend, because comics have for years had, you know, the thought balloons. We get to see everyone's heads and their ideas in a more omniscient way. And your style takes it and says, no, we're going to really just camp out in either Batman's head, maybe, or in this case, Horseman's head. And we really don't get to see from anyone else's perspective. And that gives us, it really allows us to, I think, connect more because we're really thinking along with Horseman. But it does come with those limitations of not being able to see in other people's heads as well. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because it really seems to be something you really bring out in your writing.
Well, I generally eschew thought balloons unless there's a reason for humor to use a thought balloon. And I stick with the internal monologue through narrative captions of the lead character, but no one else. I try to get across everyone else's emotions in dialogue, and of course with the help of the artist, you know, because the artist is like the actor. You know, he's bringing the emotive. I mean, when you've got an artist who can bring the emotion, you can have characters saying things that obviously they don't mean because their facial expression doesn't match what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And in the same way, you know, narrative captions can be paradoxical because they're contradicting often what you're seeing. I never did narrative captions with Batman because I never want anybody to know what he's thinking. I did them with Tim Drake as Robin because I thought it was important, because readers were interested in his journey of becoming Robin, of Tim Drake becoming Robin. And then I had the most fun with the Punisher because all the humor unintended by Frank Castle was in those war journals, where he was his ability to understate things made it really funny, because he would never graphically describe what was going on in the panel, but he would have like this sort of cold analytical way of speaking in the narrative captions in his war journals, and it was always a source of humor. So the Horseman, there's some of that, but largely, you know, I want, you know, you to know, you know, what he's doing, and it's like, why is he even writing these after action reports? It's because this is something he did when he was in the military, and it's almost a therapeutic thing for him to try to know, like, what just happened? What did I just do? What did I accomplish here? And writing it down helps him. So, and then also it helps the reader find out more about who he is, because he's not going to talk to anybody about it.
So I guess that's it's interesting, because just hearing you talk about it, it's how you came up with the archetype for a character to have some moral ambiguity, where he's just somebody who has a lot of immediacy, and he's like, he just knows he needs to get certain things done. He's not really processing the justifications or the morality of it. He's just going through the numbers and trying to accomplish goals. He wants to take care of his family and get money and things like that. And he has these routines that he's set into to help him along. Was that kind of what you had envisioned going into it, that this is the best way to present a character?
Yeah. It's the best way to present this character in particular. I mean, it's like, you know, and then the narrative captions again are because he has no one to talk to. You know, Batman, we don't need narrative captions. He can talk to Alfred. He can talk to Robin. Tim Drake needed them because he couldn't talk to Batman about the things that were worrying him. So, you know, but yeah, I think it's, you know, people say, well, how do you develop character and everything else? And I say, well, my main concern is not boring the reader. So I want to do everything I can to get you engaged with this character as quickly as possible and get you to relate to him, either like him or dislike him, or at least be interested in him. And, you know, because I have a mortal fear of boring people.
There's definitely interest. Unintelligent Design asks a little bit more about motivations. How does Horseman define crime? Does he have an end goal, something he can actually achieve, or is it just an idealistic war? I think you addressed a little bit of this, but maybe you could speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, it's not so much idealistic as this guy is. He needs a purpose in life, and he's not in the military anymore. And we'll find out as we go along that, you know, I mean, he very much has PTSD, and he's working it out this way. It's a terrible way to work out PTSD, by inviting more traumatic experiences, but this is how he's dealing with it. And what does he see as crime? it's very basic. Anyone who's hurting anyone, whether it's actually hurting them physically or selling drugs, anything like that, he thinks, okay, these people are on the table. They're taking that risk. They're putting themselves out there, and I'm the guy that's going to show up and make them pay for it, both literally and figuratively.
So could that overlap into heroes being potentially targets of his, if he feels they're hurting people?
No, I don't see that. I don't think he thinks that much about it. I mean, he's not going to go after Alpha Corps because they're cops. So I can see a point where he would go after a hero that maybe he didn't think was a hero. That's an interesting idea, actually.
Cool.
Because I do kind of want to see him go up against a superpowered guy, like a really superpowered guy, superpowered hero, and have to think his way through things. I think that'd be a pretty cool matchup. Because he is a ranger. Isn't he a ranger or something? Like he was like a top tier military guy, right?
Yeah, this is the Rippaverse, and it's a parallel universe, and history isn't ours, because they contacted me and they said, well, this war he was in, what was it? And I said, we're just going to call it the war.
The war.
War separation.
And I said it took
the
place
war
in
buttons.
Yeah, and they said it took place in the Middle East. It's like, where in the Middle East? The Middle East. I mean, there's always fighting in the Middle East, and all the places basically look the same. So
Take your pick
over there.
Yeah. It's the war. It's like remember the movie Airplane? They talk about the war. It's like, what war? What war is this you're showing us?
Umberto Eco calls it the never when. Essentially, or that's where that concept comes from. Essentially, the never when, which is this ever evolving present where you don't have to you don't date the story.
Right.
Actually, I think it was someone else quoting Umberto Eco who coined that term. But I love that idea because it's very superhero, where it's just like, it's now. The story happened now, and the thing in his past happened in the past. Don't try to tie a date to it, because then Magneto is 200 years old.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Because we still need to have those cool guys alive today.
Right.
Yeah. Reed Richards can't be a World War II vet anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I think they had the Punisher now. He's like Punisher, like 60-something years old, because he has to be a Vietnam vet now.
Oh, he'd have to be in his 70s.
Yeah, 70s now. Yeah.
So
you have to recontextualize. Yeah, so they opt to like update it, and they'll make him like an Iraq war vet next or something. You have to keep updating the war.
Just make him a shadowy. He was a military operative. He was in a hunter-killer team. That can be anytime.
Was the idea ever tossed around to have the Nazi guys also have red laces? I thought it would be kind of cool. Very iconic, the iconic red laces.
I don't know if you guys are film buffs, but I have a suggestion for a war. The War of the Buttons. It was a very, very traumatic film of a horrible war. So that would be a good
go with
inspiration.
the Emu War. One of
Oh,
the
God.
War in Australia. There we go.
They won.
Well, and so how do you... Sorry.
How's it every single time humans go up against birds, they lose? How's that possible?
Because they fly. They have this wonderful ability.
Emus don't.
That's so damn many of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I go back to a question that got brought up, and something I've noticed a parallel between you and Mike Barron that I think is interesting. And there's a current discourse right now about why boys aren't reading, and there's always been this conversation between what people think is either school or boring literature, and then literature that's meant to entertain you. And I know Mike Barron says, it's his mantra of, I am here to entertain. And you had just mentioned, I noticed that you said, I'm afraid of being boring. And I would just, is that informed by, I don't know, is that informed by a particular experience or thoughts about reading and literature? And because it's interesting how that intersects with the current discourse right now about a crisis in specifically how boys are not reading.
Well, I mean, I'm afraid of boring the reader, but myself, I'll watch, the slowest, most slow burn drama you can possibly imagine, and I'm fine with it. And I read, I try to read difficult books, but you can't expect genre fiction readers to put up with that. It can't be slow moving. It's got to be engaging from the very beginning and keep the reader, absorbed in it. So as far as why boys aren't reading, it's because the publishers have abandoned them. Yes, Harry Potter was a big phenomenon, and it didn't matter, if you're a boy or a girl, there was something there for you. But it just seems like they're actively trying to only and not only appeal to boys, but to appeal to girls and women more.
Mm-hmm.
And but this has been a long time coming. I mean, I used to be in
true.
children's book. I used to write children's books before I did comics, and it was dominated by women, and everything was about women. I used to have to write under female names because
really?
Yeah, because they were like, oh well, nobody's going to read a book by a guy called Chuck Dixon. So okay, so I was Mary J. Fulton for a book.
Really?
So, yeah.
What was that about? The Mary J.
It was
Fulton?
a Raggedy Ann and Andy book. They said nobody's going to read a Raggedy Ann and Andy book by a man. It's like, well, a man created them. Johnny Gruel wrote hundreds of the damn things.
Yeah,
That's funny. Didn't they say that J.K. Rowling she published under J.K. to keep that ambiguous?
I think that was a very wise decision because then boys would read it. Now, when I was a kid, I read books by Eleanor Estes and Shirley Jackson and stuff like that. I didn't think about it, but I think they're so worried about conservation of risk that they don't want to. They overthink this stuff when they're marketing.
Yep.
And J.K. Rowling also has other ones. I think she's like Robert Galbraith for like crime novel stuff,
Really,
or something like that. Yeah, she has different pen names for different genres too.
That tale as old as literature, it seems, hiding for some reason.
but your upcoming work in Rippaverse, it's not going to be Horseman 2. I believe you're working on a different book with Joe Bennett. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a book called Zalen, and it's the Horsemen began when we were in the middle of Alpha Corps, and Joe said, "You know what they need?" And it was basically they need a mass vigilante. And I'm like, okay, let's think about that one. And then in the middle of Horseman, I visited the Rippaverse in Dallas, and I came back after talking to everybody there, and I said to Joe, "You know what they need? They need a cosmic guy, a Green Lantern, Nexus, Silver Surfer kind of guy, a star traveling badass." And so we created Zalen.
Could you tease a little bit of the character archetype for that?
I'm kind of taking. I don't want to reveal too much, but I'm kind of taking a little bit of Warlock and a little bit of Superman and really turning all of that on its head big time. And Joe is amazing at the cosmic stuff. I didn't know that. And he sent me some samples of an unpublished space thing he did once. And it blew my mind. I'm like, okay, this guy will draw anything. So I just went crazy. And I'll give you this. At the beginning of Zalen, you'll see some bad aliens.
Bad aliens?
Yes, they're aliens based on bats.
That's going to be a running theme, I think. It has to be.
Yeah. It was like until you pointed it out, I realized, okay, there's this unconscious thing going on here.
I was about to ask that. Is that subconscious of like working out?
No, I didn't really think. I just thought, bats are creepy to begin with, and if you had an alien race that was based on bats, and then of course Joe took it completely ran with it. We got to have those characters back. They were so impressive.
This will be a running joke. It is always fight bats. It'll be pretty good.
With baseball bats.
Yes, with baseball.
Yeah, it has to be a bat against bat. Yeah. Bat on bat violence.
Either fight fire with fire, fight bats with bats.
That's interesting. So they gave you kind of a sandbox to work with in the Rippaverse, and you deliver ideas to them. You think what this universe needs and where it needs to grow, and you're able to push it into those boundaries.
Yeah, there's a lot of creative freedom. I mean, it's Eric's sandbox, but he welcomes everybody else to play, and there's been very little like in the way of changes when we come up with this stuff. They just want to make sure it fits in the universe. So there's a lot of questions when I write something. Well, what about this? What about that? And as long as everybody's satisfied with the answers, we go ahead. Because I mean, I've also written the 2-part Great War of Separation, which takes us a generation back in the past of the Rippaverse and explains a lot of what's going on now in the Rippaverse. And wow, that was a lot of fun to write. And by opening the door to me to give me that much carte blanche in the universe, of course, I began setting up all kinds of things that will play out, over the next few projects.
Are you doing a little bit like what Alan Moore did when he came into Image, and he just got to completely reimagine a lot of it and kind of made Wildstorm, I think, a lot of those characters what they really ended up being known for. So
Yeah, quite kind of like building stuff that grounds them, gives them a pass, gives you a reason. 'Cause, I mean, think about it. A character like Brian Solari, we don't know anything about him. He's a Superman archetype, but where did he get the powers? Why is he the way he is? And I get to explain all that.
Cool. We're looking, yeah. So,
Very
having
cool.
read Alpha Core and and ISOM, I'm definitely like I want more of what these people, what their powers can do, how they interact, so I can start creating my own comic vine threads on who can beat who in a fight.
Yeah.
What we all enjoy in superhero fiction. Can we were
Exactly.
arguing earlier about can Magneto lift Thor's hammer? So stuff is
It makes
Superman-
sense that he would be able to.
He totally has in the comics. I was arguing
Right.
with somebody about it. Yeah.
Well, the fact that he did in the comics doesn't, that's not convincing enough. It's not a convincing argument.
You're right. That's
Doesn't
right.
make sense. I mean, is the hammer subject to magnetism? No. Which we would have to imagine it is, since he creates lightning with it.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
True.
And there's the extent of my scientific knowledge.
yeah, I'm thinking about that.
I'm able to throw stuff out like that. I'm like, wow, did I say that?
So you had I remember an older video that you did, a previous video you did from some time ago, where you had mentioned that one of the bones you had to pick with the industry was that a lot of the books were not well crafted. So I wanted to ask you about not about bad craftsmanship, but what are some of the hallmarks of we're looking at a generation of people who are wanting to get into comics, people who want to write stories, they want to be good craftsmen. So what are some of the things that you see a story and it speaks to you that this is good craftsmanship, like looking at a good table? So what is good craftsmanship in comics? What does that look like? What are some of the hallmarks of that in your view?
Well, good craftsmanship should be invisible. I mean, if you're watching a movie and you're noticing the costuming, costumer didn't do a good job. Now, you might later on, after I've watched it or watching it for the third time, go, wow, they really did an awesome job with the costume. But if you're noticing it, or if you're noticing the background, the set direction, things like that, you're bored with the story. So good craftsmanship should be hidden, and there's rules to follow to make that happen. And there's things that you have to do and you have to learn. And, I learned them over time, largely just by studying comics. I mean, I would read a comic and really love it and then go, well, why did I like that one so much? I mean, this is when I was 10. I'd go back. I mean, if it was possible to stare holes in a comic book, I would have stared holes in Spider-Man Annual 2 because I read that story so many times, trying to think of why did this make me laugh? Why was the story so cool? And what worked about it. And that's really, you just got to put those hours in. And then eventually, when you get in the business, you're working with people that are, ahead of you. They know stuff and they can actually articulate it. And, when you're getting into anything creative and you don't know the language of it, you don't even really know how to think about it. And then you get the words, page turn panel, establishment panel, close up, medium shot, high angle, low angle, all that stuff. And, those are things you learn. I mean, it's for a while there's this online school in comics called Comics Experience. And for a couple of years there, they were paying me to read and critique scripts by their students. And some of the scripts were amazingly good, just astonishingly good stuff. But they all made the same mistake. They were afraid to tell the artist what to do. And they would go like, maybe you want to do this, or I might suggest this angle. It's like, no. You're not insulting the artist by telling him what he wants you to tell him what to do. He wants to know what's important in the story. So you just straight out describe what you see in your head in each panel. Picture the page in your head. And tell him, and then then he knows what to do, because otherwise he's doing your job for you. He's guessing, he's and then he gets to the end of the story and say, "Well, I really screwed that up. There was this thing I should have emphasized that I didn't." And it's just the simple mechanics of that, and that's the craft.
Has anyone ever actually on that note? Has anyone actually read like an Alan Moore page of script?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay, like the Watchmen script, the one
Watchmen
panel.
one? Yeah, where he not only does he tell you what's important, he's like, "All right, I'm soaked up, got my blood up to my elbows, veins in my teeth." There's a lot of stuff in there. Is crazy.
I feel bad for Gibbons having to read that. It's so much description.
It's just one panel. He wrote this War and Peace.
Uh-huh.
What's your take on that kind of writing, Chuck? Do you think you're overloading the artist when you're being so?
Yeah, I mean, Alan Moore is undeniably a genius, and he's very, very good at comics, and he's terrific, right? But he writes the way he writes. And unfortunately, because he was so popular in the 80s and 90s, his scripts got around. And wannabes were reading his scripts and thinking, "Oh, this is what a comic book script looks like." And it's like, no, it's only what his scripts look like. You cannot be Alan Moore. Don't try to be Alan Moore. Be yourself. And to me, it's, you try to just keep the descriptions as terse as possible, because you just want to care about the story. What's important in this panel to the story, and leave the rest up to the artist. I mean, I'll create new characters and not really describe them. He's a man, he's of this certain age, and he's got to be this tall or whatever. But you can make him Hispanic, Chinese, black. I really don't care. That's not important. What's important is these elements of this character. So whatever you want to draw, you draw. And same thing for women. Any character. You got to leave the artist room to interpret, but you got to keep them on the story. Just story.
That makes me feel better.
Did you go back and forth?
I was too straight with the artist that works with me on the G-Sedai comic books, because occasionally we'll have a little bit of back and forth where I'll send him my panel breakdown. He'll send me the sketch page back, and I'm like, no, that angle's like completely wrong. If I didn't explain it well, I'm sorry, but it needs to look like this.
Yeah, because they want to get it right. I mean, they're telling the story.
Afterwards, I'm like, am I like cracking the whip on the dude too much, or
Well, it's better to do it in layout. I mean, boy, the thing I hate most is having to ask an artist to redraw something. I think I've only done it like 4 times in my entire career.
Wow.
And you don't want to do that. You want to look at the layouts, the thumbnails. You want to look at everything first, and make suggestions there.
Do they get offended if you're asking them to redraw?
No, because they usually understand why. I had Flint Henry redraw an entire 2-page spread, and you don't know Flint, but Flint threw a whole dramatic hissy fit because he thought it was funny. He thought he could, actually convince me he was angry, but he wasn't.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good that things were so cordial and playful like that. It's
no, we're good friends. I can't say that every artist is like that. I mean, I had an artist once throw a flashback into a story that wasn't there, and he introduced an element to the story that wasn't in the rest of the story, and I had to explain to the editor, readers are going to be expecting to see the elements introduced in the flashback again. And I said, we can't ask him to redraw the entire 10-page flashback, but we will have to ask him to redraw the end of the story to include those elements that he introduced. And
Wow.
He just thought his thing was, I just thought it'd make the story more interesting. Well, thank you for trying to make my story more interesting.
Wow. A 10-page edition?
It was a 50-page story.
Okay.
So he had a little wiggle room.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that those kind of liberties a little more common before?
Well, back in the Marvel, working Marvel style, yeah. I mean, you left so much up to the artist. You never know what you were going to get back. You would get back pages, and I'd be like, I have no idea what these people are saying. They seem to be very upset about something, but I don't remember writing that scene. That's why I basically said, I'm not doing this anymore. I was working for Larry Hama. I said, I'm not writing this way anymore. I'm writing full script.
Mhm.
So your
Yeah, I was
take the result is mostly bad. Like there weren't hit and misses in terms of the delivery. Sometimes you got something better, but for the most part, you think it probably worked out worse.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my thing is the artist spends more time on the page than I do. He spends, a good artist spends an entire day on a page. I might have spent 15, 20 minutes writing it. And so I'm willing to, I hear back from artists all the time. What if I did this? What if I did that? I'm like, great. Joe Bennett, it's like, can I have another 2-page spread? And he goes, okay, we'll figure that out. We'll give you another 2-page spread. But it's it's give and take. But the Marvel style, it leaves too much work for the artist to do. I mean, they're having to bring the heart and drama to the story. And the only times I was willing not to do full script was when I was working with Johnny Romita Jr. on Warzone, Punisher Warzone, and he didn't want to work full script. And I said, okay, I'm fine with that. I mean, you're a terrific storyteller. I said, but please allow me to include a lot of dialogue so that you understand the drama of each sequence. And he said, well, that's fine. And then I worked with Joe Kubert the same way. I would supply him with a lot of the dialogue because I said, you have to understand the emotional heart of this scene, when you're doing the art. Otherwise, I'm going to be lost, and I'm going to have them saying, non sequitur idiotic things.
Riot Press Comics is curious about your experience. Oh, sorry. Working with Alex Toth. Could you talk about that?
I never worked with Alex Toth.
Hmm.
I would have loved to have worked with Alex Toth. That must be somebody else.
Yeah, they're thinking of somebody else. Clearly, some confusion there.
I remember seeing something because you had mentioned how Alan Moore, wrote his way, and people shouldn't copy that. And I remember reading something that Stan kind of said something similar about the method, his Marvel method with Kirby and such, where he would just come in afterwards. And he said this worked really well because I was working with Jack Kirby, and so we were able to make this thing work. But he said it wouldn't necessarily work for people nowadays, and for people not to necessarily assume that kind of a back and forth. And I think it speaks to the certain relationships those particular collaborators had.
Yeah, I mean, before it was called the Marvel method, we used to call it the Lee and Kirby method. And the thing was, everybody's not Lee and Kirby. And I got to work with Stan on a couple of projects, and I kind of saw how he edited my scripts. I was like, okay, I think I just learned something here. And I looked back, and it made me go back to Stan's work pre-Jack Kirby, which is all good stuff. Stories are all entertaining. But then he gets to Kirby, and his writing changes. And a lot of the stuff he was correcting my script were Kirby influences, not Stan Lee influences, which is really odd. But it was like you remember classic Kirby Lee stories. There's 16 people on the street shouting at the Hulk and the Thing fighting. And they all make remarks. It's a publicity for some movie, or I'm running away. You don't have to tell me twice. Somebody call the police. Everybody's got something to say, and that's what he was doing to my scripts. I had 4 people in a panel. He was like, "Well, you got this guy didn't say anything, and that guy didn't say anything, and that guy didn't." Oh, okay, I get it now.
Well, if anybody doesn't mind, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. You recently sold the script to Hollywood, and you've got a movie coming out, I believe, A Working Man.
Yeah, it's based on a novel that I wrote called Levon's Trade. It's part of a 12 novel series. Well, 12 so far, anyway. And I sort of brought it to the attention of Sylvester Stallone when I had the opportunity, and then he ended up writing the screenplay. So it comes out March 28th.
That's
and
great.
It's all good, they assure me.
That prompts a fascinating question, because when you, as a comic book writer, you are the one who gets your work adapted through that particular venue through an artist, and now it's being adapted in an entirely different way and being adapted by someone else writing it.
Right.
So what was it like being adapted in that sense?
Well, I mean, I was perfectly comfortable with Sly, and he makes me call him Sly. 5 minutes of Mr. Stallone, and he's like, "Okay, I've had it. Call me Sly." He got it. He got it from the beginning. We kind of approached this stuff the same way. Within 5 minutes of meeting each other, we were completing each other's sentences. So we kind of approached story the same way. So I had all the confidence in the world in his work, because he really understood it.
And he's been script writing for a lot of years. He wrote Rocky, I believe, was his first.
Yeah, he wrote Rocky. He does a lot of writing in the movies he's in that he doesn't get credit for. He does a lot of rewriting. I now know how to spot a Sly scene in a movie he's in. And I've asked him a few times, that scene in Daybreak where you kind of have a soliloquy, you wrote that, didn't you? And he's like, yeah. So, I mean, Daylight, movie Daylight.
There's certainly
a lot of scenes in Cliffhanger. And I've talked to people who worked on Cliffhanger in the visual effects and stuff. And they said that he came on board and turned a C-level action film into something special.
Wow. What does he give to the script? Like, what is his approach usually when he's recrafting?
Like, what if we did this, and just comes up with this insane idea? I mean, Cliffhanger, the many scenes he thought of, the scene with the bats, he came up with.
The bats again.
They're in this bats again. And then Nighthawks, if you remember the movie Nighthawks, that twist ending where, you think the bad guy's sneaking up on Lindsay Wagner, and it turns out to be Sly. That's him. That's him doing it. So he comes on set and like, how do we pump this up?
It's the same approach you were mentioning, where basically you never bore the reader. You always want to surprise them with some new element. Was he surprising you with a lot of the work that he was doing with your work?
No, he stayed pretty close. They had what they called open up the ending a bit, because the novel ends kind of like a 1970s movie, which is fine for a novel, but audiences expect something different from a Jason Statham action film, so they opened it up a bit more. There's a bit more mayhem happening at the end of the movie than in the novel.
It is a good sign that it has Statham on board. I do like Jason Statham.
Yeah, he's got all the moves and he can act, so he's got a lot of screen presence. I mean, tremendous amount of screen. He's on screen, you don't look at anybody else.
Is there any comedy?
I like him in the character.
Nighthawks. Sorry, I just wanted to show the poster.
Yeah.
Audience members not familiar. Jason Statham, comedy, acting.
Yeah, I think he's funny.
Oh no, I'm just asking, is there any comedy in this movie? Because he's hilarious in that spy movie where he plays.
There's humor, but no comedy, and most of the laugh lines come from David Harbour playing a character called Gunny, who they tell me test audiences fell in love with this character. So those are most of the laugh lines.
Do you actually get to spend time on the set? And
I don't no interest. I could have if I wanted. I guess if I pressed, I could. Hey, can I visit the set? But I had 2 Academy Award-winning screenwriters working on the movie, so I thought they don't need me around. and sometimes I'll watch videos where writers visited the set, and it's like, what are you doing there? You look so out of place. And everybody's trying to treat you nice, but it's obviously wish you'd go away. This is really embarrassing video on the movie The Changeling, where Michael J. Straczynski is hanging out on set with Clint Eastwood. It's so obvious that Clint just wants him to get in his car and drive off. I have nothing to say to you.
That's hilarious.
I didn't want to be that guy. Plus it's boring. Filmmaking is boring.
Sure. Hanging out by the bagel table and
I don't need that at all.
Drinking all the coffee.
You're just scooping M&Ms up by the dozens.
Kanto Hare, sorry about the name. Did Stallone ever sign those copies of the Expendables comic?
I don't think he ever did. He's a busy man. That was up to Richard to make that happen, and I don't think it happened.
Was that the last thing you guys worked on together? Was the Expendables book?
No, we did a Rambo First Kill.
Right.
And which I'd like to do another one. Like carve out some time. But
that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
there any chance that we'll see those films, those stories ever get filmed? And
No, I mean,
You wanna
Expendables
do-
Go to Hell was made into a comic because Sly had the idea for it. And I said, well, they're never going to let you make a movie where the Expendables literally die and go to hell and fight Satan. And he said, yeah, I know. I said, but boy, it'd make a hell of a comic. And so I called Richard Meyer, and he's this huge Expendables fan. And I said, you're going to want to be sitting down when I ask you this. And so he sat down. I go, I'm sitting down. I said, do you want to do an Expendables comic with Sylvester Stallone? And he was very, very calm, which surprised me. And then 5 minutes into talking to him, he says, wait a minute. You're talking about an actual Expendables comic, not a comic like the Expendables. I said, no, actually an Expendables comic. And then he kind of freaked out.
I remember him telling that story where he did say that, oh, I assume you mean like the Expendables.
Yeah.
Then he was really freaked out that, he did tell that he was amazed because I think he kind of based his comic book Jawbreakers on
Yes.
Expendables,
Very
G.I.
much
Joe,
so.
that sort of thing. So, that'd be like a hero calling him up and saying, whoa, I get to work with the actual Expendables.
I mean,
I think
he would
wants
go
to-
he would go into Expendables lore with me, and it's like he sounded like a Doctor Who or Transformers fan. I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, I saw
Expendables
the
good.
movies, but I never really thought about them this much.
I didn't know there was lore. I just thought they were like pretty
I think
cool.
Richard is the only one who has Expendables.
Look at that. I didn't know there was lore. My favorite one still is the second one where you get everybody. You get Arnold Schwarzenegger, you get Bruce Willis, you get everyone. They drop all the lines. No, you've been back enough. I'll be back. That was pretty good. I like that.
Yeah.
The bad guy was named Villain, which I loved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually I was brought in by Sly to pitch some rewrites on that because he wasn't happy with the screenplay, and my only contribution is that they shot it in those mines. Because I brought up mines, and they were like, "Hey, we know that where there's some mines in Bulgaria we can shoot it." Okay.
Have you collaborated with him on anything else that we might have not heard?
Well, it's really odd. I mean, when the Expendables 2 deal fell apart, I thought, well, that's it. I met Sylvester Stallone. That was cool. That's the end. That's my Hollywood story. But he kept calling me, and he would just call me and talk about stuff. And he got me work at Lionsgate doing some web content. He got me a job doing dialogue for the Expendables game. And then he called one time to about the Golden Globe Awards.
Was it the Ricky Gervais ones?
No, it was just, it was. I don't know if that he was, but he was. It was the thing about seating at the Globe. He was upset about it, and he called me when he moved to Florida just to say, hey, I'm moving to Florida. So but we've been in contact via email a lot over the movie. But yeah, I mean, he's, you hear stories about Hollywood, and he's like the exception. He's just like a normal guy. I love talking to him.
Has he told you, or have you had a chance to speak to him ever since Trump made him the ambassador to Hollywood?
Yeah, I mean, I just congratulated him.
Yeah.
I don't think he knew that. Well, I mean, Mel Gibson said he didn't know at a point. I don't know if Sly knew or not.
Yeah. James
I think
Wood is
Sly's like within a golf swing of Mar-a-Lago where he's living. So.
Right. Yeah, I think they visited once. I remember seeing them on stage.
Yeah.
I don't know what the intention is there. I guess they're going to try to get them new sources of funding and new creative direction is the plan.
Yeah, and it's Trump, so it was just another way to stay in the news cycle for 5 more minutes. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's the guy's style. He's obviously dominating the news.
Sure.
It's true.
Have you ever talked about the Rippaverse with Sylvester Stallone? Sly?
No, I've never actually talked about comics. He's a comics fan, but I don't know his taste in comics. I haven't really had those kind of conversations. And the thing is and Eric's never asked either, because like everybody I know who has even a tangential interest in entertainment has asked me, "Did you tell Sly this?" No. I'm not
Did you tell Sly about me?
Yeah, it's like, I have this project. Could you show it to Sly? I was like, no. I mean, And I have to explain coinage to them. Coinage is a Hollywood term. Like, I have coinage. I know Sylvester Stallone. I'm
Yeah.
not going to spend that coinage on you. I'm not even going to spend it on me. I'm not one of those guys like, hey, Sly, what about this? I've never done that, except when it came to the Rambo comic. I said, look, we can do this and we can actually make you money. I like to say until the Levon Cade movie came out, Sly made more money on our relationship than I had up to that point, because the book did really well. So, but now
You kind of
taking care of me.
you learn to hold back a little bit, I guess, with like your seniority and experience. You realize the guys who are just too pushy don't always.
Yeah. And I don't want anything from him. I told him when the deal fell apart, I spent all those too. I said, hey man, it was cool talking to you. It was cool meeting you and everything else. That was great. And I would have been fine with that.
Very cool. Just to pivot quickly back to the Rippaverse, Brian Suddenly Old asks, will the fog be lifting in the Rippaverse going forward as the characters start developing? Also, will you still be making comics outside of the Rippaverse? I believe the answer is yes. Or are you exclusive to the Rippaverse right now?
No, I have no exclusivity. I'm doing stuff with Vox Day for Archaven. I just started today writing a graphic novel adaptation of Levon's Trade. I still do work for Richard Meyer when we can agree on a concept. So yeah, and I got my own creator owned stuff. I'm doing a comic for Graham Nolan at Compass Comics. So yeah, I don't want to sign exclusive, and they keep me pretty busy at Rippaverse, but not busy enough to dominate my time.
So speaking of being prolific, another thing that our current generation faces as a challenge is getting really easily distracted. And so do you have any tips you can share about how you're able to be so prolific, and the things that you've picked up over your career of writing that help you just get into the zone and just put out the page counts you can put out?
Well, the hardest thing about writing, and any writer, every writer's different, but we're all the same on this one, is getting rolling. You don't eat breakfast and then jump behind the keyboard and fly. It doesn't happen. Most people have to warm up, generate whatever. And the simplest, I got the simple piece of advice. I was reading an interview with a screenplay writer from the 1940s, and he had one tip for writers, and he said, don't write down your last idea of the day. So if you know where your scene is going, and you know what the next dialogue exchange is, or you know what the segue to the next scene is, don't write it down. And then the next day, you know where you're going to start. And it sounds silly, but boy, it works. It works because I already know what I'm writing. I don't know what I'm going to write after that, but I got the engine started. The well is primed. Now I can get moving. And when I get moving, time dissolves. And I get distracted like anybody else. Like, oh, okay, I wrote 3 pages. Let's check the email. But then get back to it.
That process of letting an idea marinate seems very important.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that. That's really good. That's an excellent.
Yeah, it is. It sounds like one of those dumb life hack kind of things, but it actually works.
Sorry, Daniel, you had a comment?
No, I said that I'm going to actually try that. I've been working on like an inspiration system, a way to jumpstart myself and be a little bit more efficient when I do sit down in front of the keyboard. And I've got it refined down pretty well. I call it the mood machine. It's just my little name for it. But that never occurred to me. So I'm going to try that.
Well, it's really important. Comics are kind of in my DNA. So it's not as hard with comics, but boy, prose writing is a marathon. And sometimes it's a marathon.
That's what I do most.
Yeah. And well, this, you get your opening and you're off to the races. Okay, got my opening. I figured this how the story's going to begin. And then you're flying. And then you get to that freaking middle passage. Okay, now they got to get to Mordor. How are they going to do that? What's going to happen along the way? And you're like slog. And then suddenly you're on the downslope. Like all the stuff I had to set up for my climax and my ending is in place. Now I'm on cruise control.
Yep. But going up. I think of it like a writing roller coaster, and it's when you have the really big high right towards the middle, and it's just right about to get to the drop, but you got that slow incline upward that you got to get through. That's the hardest part of the journey.
I think the most surprising thing about writing prose, after having written comics for years and years and years, I mean, comics, it's like, well, it's got to end at page 22. I'm on page 18. Got to start thinking about page 22, right? And then prose, what surprised me was, you know, I'm writing, and then it's like, hey, story's over. I just wrote the last chapter and didn't even realize it.
Yep.
And that's different.
But it's been like months.
Yes. Months. And how did I do that? Mm-hmm. I still look back and look at I did that. How did I do that? Because I never set out to be anything but a comic book writer. I only wrote prose because I wasn't getting enough comic work. And my wife kept saying, "You can write a novel. You can write a novel. You can write a novel." So
you absolutely can. I've read some of the Levon Cade books.
Oh,
they're awesome.
Thank you. Had a lot of fun then.
Where do you think you've enjoyed the greatest amount of success? Was it in prose or in comics?
Well, it's been in comics, but with the movie coming out, you know, when Amazon calls you and says, "We really want to start pushing your book," it's like, okay, strap in. Because I mean, I got in the tail end of the ebook gold rush, and boy, I made a lot of money that first year, and then I made a lot less the next year, and a lot less the year after that. You know, so it was kind of over. But with Amazon behind me, you know, happy days are here again. So, but comics is, you know, I mean, I've sold millions of comics. I mean, Punisher Warzone sold 3.5 million. My Hobbit adaptation has sold millions of copies around the world. So, you know, obviously, I'm still a comic book writer.
A comment from the chat: Milano is wanting a Demolition Man sequel.
Trust me, he's thought of that, but you know. Sly's like, you know, he's 75. He's aware of it. I can't keep doing that stuff. You know, I can't keep going to the gym. You know,
we were almost living in the Demolition Man sequel.
The sequel will be insane now.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they can do an AI and he'll do the voice.
or it could do like the franchise wars. That'd be pretty cool. I want to see how Taco Bell won.
Well, I'm in Australia, and anyone who's in the UK as well knows you can get fined for offending someone, so it's almost there. You know?
Yeah, but what's we all want to know what's the deal with the seashells?
That is true. Yeah, there's the internet has come up with lots of theories on that.
I don't want to know.
Than the last.
The obvious one is the more violent scenario. You scrape everything out of there.
Perfect.
It sounded so simple. It sounded like even children know how to use the 3 seashells.
Don't be an idiot. Anyone knows how to use the 3 seashells. Come on.
What a great line that was. What a great little thing. It's lasted decades.
It's such a Jack Kirby kind of concept, because Kirby used to throw that stuff out there and not explain how it worked. I mean, and the thing is, today we all have a mother box. It seemed like the most ludicrous concept when I first read it. Like, no way you could have a little thing you can hold in your hand. It's got all the answers in the universe, and you can talk to it, and it talks back. And going, give me a break.
Yeah, Alexa, tell me how silly that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Scary times. I'd like to wind down and talk about some projects that people have coming up. So I'll start with something that I noticed you were recently crowdfunding, Chuck. This French Baron book on Kickstarter looked really interesting. Is it fulfilling pretty soon? And could you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, yeah, we're done on Kickstarter, but we're going to go up on Indiegogo next. And it is inspired by an actual French baron, Jean-Francois Cavalier. He's a noble, he's got a title. He also works in the film industry, and I've been involved with him on several projects. And he came up with this idea, and he found Vince Shade, who's also a screenwriter and a screen effects guy. And Vince said, well, I can do the artwork for him. And then we were kind of off to the races. came up with the concept and put it together. And it's a really good looking book. So, and this is the first of 2 books.
Yeah, the art definitely did stand out.
Yeah, it's got kind of a European look to it, but it's a story about a Crusader knight who gets mortally wounded in Jerusalem when Jerusalem was taken back by Saladin, and he finds a hidden cache of wine, and it turns out to be wine that was water until Jesus turned it into wine.
Mm.
And by drinking it, he becomes immortal. And so we see him travel through time, through different time periods and things like that to reach present day.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to work on.
Is there an expected fulfillment date as of yet?
Yeah, it'll be out in May. And then, we're working on the second book, which I hope will follow quickly on the heels of it to complete the story. And it's in a Euro album style. It's in the larger format style.
Nice.
Which I've been encouraging a lot of these crowdfunding and independent guys to go for, because it's easier to sell into bookstores and it's easier to sell overseas. And you're not going to sell it into comic book stores anyway, so who cares if it can be bagged? Just put together a larger volume.
Yeah, I mean that's logical. Especially in the crowdfunding avenue, you do want something a little bit more premium.
Yeah, and you look at the book trade, which is outsells regular comic books, and It's all larger format. It's either larger format or smaller manga size format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Literature Devil, I don't think you have anything crowdfunding, but would you like to tell us a little bit about? Yeah, currently.
Well,
right?
that one was Dr. Alpha's Miracle Child Second Chance campaign. That's my first comic I ever did. We re-crowdfunded it, went pretty well. That one's about Dr. Alpha, the one of the most famous and dangerous supervillains in the universe, is approached by his son while he's in really, really down, vaulted up prison, and said, "Oh no, there's your old nemesis, the Mulvion, the Martian mastermind, is invading Earth, and we need you to help us stop him." And then you get through all kinds of shenanigans, twists and turns, revelations are told upon this stuff, and it kind of ends up. I think it's a really interesting ending, very, very interesting ending. Like I had a difference here between Mulvion, the mad Martian genius, and Dr. Alpha, the evil genius. So they go head to head, lots of twists and turns. Really enjoyed writing that one. That one's really fun to write.
I like that concept. That's cool.
It turned to be 100. I was going to have it be like a 80 pages, and turned to 112. The curse of the writers. It turned to 112. But they go in with like the Crusaders, and the leader guy is like he has Excalibur, and he has Excalibur. He's a leader. White Knight has some. Everyone likes the jokes I have with him because he's so straightforward. He's always like, "Hey, no cussing." And then later on, I have him bust through, eye dangling out of his head. Let's fucking go! Like he cusses. It's good stuff. I have my favorite part though is when I have the Mulvion. He kidnaps 100 kids that he found out were genetically. He's a geneticist, so they're genetically connected to these superheroes. So he kidnapped 100 kids. They're all connected to superheroes to as human shields, so they won't get attacked. And so during the whole thing, he gets the formula for superhuman cloning from Dr. Alpha, and he melts all these kids into a batter and makes them into a giant genetic monster, and that kind of becomes the main plot. I dedicate a whole page, I think it's 9-panel page, of watching one of these guys get melted down. He's like, what's going on? Gets melted down. It was kind of fun because he was like a Hardy Boy kind of guy. He's like happy-go-lucky, kissing for the cheerleader type, Letterman jacket. Hey, guy, we're gonna get out of here, no problem. And then, and so like, unfortunately, he had no powers. The kids that didn't have any powers were just flushed like a out of the ship. So the ones with powers got to go in the soup that made the monster.
Wow,
this is a lot of fun to write.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's great stuff there, Literature Devil. Thank you. Michael, you don't need any introduction, but just in case, tell us about
I
the
don't?
Lucent. No, everybody knows the Lucent. Come on.
Oh, do they? Yeah.
Who doesn't know the
What did Mike Barron say? He said it's completely original. That's all I'm going to say now. I just Mike said that, so that's all I need to say.
Cool.
I said I've actually got these new trading cards up, and these are a lot of fun. It gave me a chance to do some cool art, spread my wings a bit like that. But one of the fun things about it, because everyone puts like stats and stuff on the back of their trading cards. So I thought, all right, well, let's actually be original. I put a little mini comic, and I don't know how this is going to. I'm trying my best to make it look so you can actually see it. I mean, a trading card is tiny, but it's a lot of fun to do, because how often do you get to do a little one-page snippet? And because when you write a story, there's so many things that you can't fit into. You can't fit everything in, obviously, because the narrative will just be a complete mess. But there are certain little highlights and things you might want to focus in on, and they're cool and they're fun and they build intrigue and stuff like that. So that's what I put on the back of my trading cards. And I've got 9 cards with 2 chase cards. And so potentially, if you can get your hands on the chase cards, that's 11 new pages of Lucent content. And that's what I'm crowdfunding at the moment.
Wow.
Could you give us a little bit of a pitch on the Lucent? The 2 issues out already. What's the story thus far?
So imagine if the things that we can do in our dreams, there was a way to unlock that and do it in real life. That's sort of the most basic premise. Now imagine if that power has been with us since the beginning of mankind, but it's been sort of controlled and stamped down by nefarious orders and organizations and everything. What might the world look like? What might they have built over the last 10,000 years of slowly growing civilization? What does that look like now? The main character, Ella, is one such person, though she doesn't know it yet at the beginning of the story, and she's finding it out now, sort of her lineage and her place in that whole world. So she runs into a cavalcade of interesting characters, and that's where we're up to. And I'm currently working on a supplemental book with an excellent artist called Rod Looper. I usually do all of my own art, and then after all that, the 3rd book, Ember Crown, will be starting to roll out.
Very cool. And people can pick up all the books on thelucentcomic.com. There's a link in the description.
That's right. I followed Rini and Eric July and Shane Davis and a couple of others who decided, screw this, we're going to do it ourselves. Make our own websites.
Good for you.
Thank you.
It's the thing to do.
It's doing well.
Followed up by my chintzy process. Web designer, I am not.
Daniel P., tell us about your comic.
Well, it's a comic adaptation of my novel series that I've been working on for a couple of years now, G Sedai. It is about a nanotech-infused neo-samurai in a futuristic Tokyo. He's been designed by a corporation to be their ultimate clandestine weapon, but he has very few social skills because of it. And he, after a mission, meets a young girl fleeing sex traffickers, and for reasons he doesn't fully understand at first, decides to protect her from them, give her a place to stay for the night, even though he knows it's going to run him afoul of the corporation. And the corporation says, yeah, we don't like any of that. Get rid of the girl. And you go back to doing what we told you to do. But that time spent with her, she provides an understanding of humanity that he never had, a friend, and he chooses to fight against his own company and the rest of his unit of super killers in order to keep her alive.
Wow, that's an awesome setup.
Thank you.
That is an awesome setup.
It's
Yeah.
been super fun to do. I'm working on the third book, which finishes what I call the Angel War arc, because each of the super killers in the unit are named after archangels. So there's a total of 8 of them. And then I found my artist and thought, hey, I'll try making a comic book too. Everybody else is doing it, and fumbled my way through figuring that out. The standard editions that we've been doing are in black and white. It's very manga style. I'm actually going to do a 100-page manga version once we finish issue number 3, which we're almost done. I've got about 5 pages left to finish on that one, and put that out together as like a 100-page manga.
Nice.
We offered during the campaigns, which when number 3 comes out, there will be another campaign on Fund My Comic. We offer what's called the special edition. I call it Color Pop, where like you see the neon signs in the background of that big panel there. My wonderfully artistic daughter colors those with neon accenting. The rest of it stays black and white, but certain specific pieces within the panels are colored to create an extra vibrance and contrast against it.
Cool.
Very nice.
Right.
Yeah, looks amazing. Everybody,
Thanks.
Jizzadai Comics, Jizzadai
Yep.
Comics, sorry.
It's all
.com.
GCNIBooks.com. Yeah.
Yep, you can check out the link in the description. And finally,
Oh, totally forgot. I also have audiobooks of both book 1 and book 2.
Okay. Cool.
and you offer editorial services at whimsyland.com for people.
Yes, whimsyland.org. That is my website. It just got a whole rebuild because I hired a web guy because I'm not good at this, obviously. But yeah, it's all set up and we're rolling back in business again. I've been doing it for 3 years in total, but I've been paying my bills for almost 2 years now by providing back-end support for writers, comic book creators, script writers, doing developmental, think tanking and general editing and proofing. A little bit of ghostwriting here and there.
Very cool. Twitless, tell us about the adventures of Omega Girl.
Yeah, no, the great Mike Barron himself has said, "Who are you? Get out of my house! I'm calling the cops." There's my pull quote.
Never meet your heroes, Twitless.
I learned that lesson the hard way, and now there's a mugshot of me online.
I'm surprised you would call the cops.
Well, he pulled his gun first. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. He led his shovel to his neighbor that day.
Yeah. All right. No,
It's got placards on the wall of cease and desist letters.
Right. I love superheroes. My inner child has refused to grow up. I love Superman. I love Batman. I love it all. I love even Stardust, the super wizard. I love the Golden Age nonsense. I am writing a dissertation on superheroes. And if that's not enough, I just needed to make my own because, Marvel right now says, we'll find you. Don't bother applying. So I basically started self-teaching myself and self-funding myself. So I cobbled together the money I had and I started telling 4-page mini stories to teach myself how to do beginning, middle, and end. That was Adventures of Omega Girl #1 for at least half of the stories. And then I rounded it out with a 12-pager, started teaching myself how to do longer form stories. It was one of to anyone who's, listening, and wants to hear from a complete amateur. But I learned so much about storytelling just by those limitations. And so the Adventures of Omega Girl issues 1 through 4, currently on Indie Planet, issue 5 is finished and should be out pretty soon, is my journey in superhero storytelling. And it is also a love letter to, Supergirl and Superman. And I also try to inform it with a little bit of depth from my literary background. And I'm building into my final, not final, but my first major 4-issue arc, which is another big lesson to learn. I've been doing just serialized storytelling for so long that didn't necessarily need interconnectedness, but now I'm juggling 4 scripts at once. Chuck, I don't know how you juggled the amount that you juggled, but just trying to juggle a 4-issue arc, it was just all new set of muscles needing to be learned in the craft of writing. So this is a joy for me to do. And you can pick up the first 4 issues, print on demand or digital on Indie Planet. If you want to see the adventures of a superhero fighting a evil organization trying to take over the city, classic aspirational superhero storytelling. And with a little bit of modern flair here and there, I do try to have there's a little bit of a manga influence going on as well, because I love manga as well. So if you love superheroes, so do I, and come read some superhero stuff with me.
Cool.
Very cool. Thank you, Tootless. Well, thank you to the panel. Thank you absolutely to Mr. Dixon. It's been more than an honor to have you on and learn so much talking to you about your career and all the fascinating work that you've done. So really a huge pleasure. Thank you.
It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun having a conversation with you guys. I enjoyed it a lot.
Cool. And panel, you guys got into like a really great discussion. This was a very hefty, stream. So I definitely recommend people go over it more than once. A lot of really interesting things teased out and went into in depth. So that's to the credit of the rich panel that we have here today. So thank you guys very much for joining.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime, guys. So with that, we will bid everyone adieu, and we'll see you all again very soon. Have a good night.
Bye.